What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, we are three again. We had been a two-man show for the last few weeks. Ralph, welcome back. It's been a really big miss out of you. I'm joking. I think it's been good to obviously do the show, even if it's not with you or with you as well. We are still going strong. And Paraguayan football is going strong as well because, obviously we're right in towards the end of May. It's hard to believe that we're already a couple of weeks away from June, which is obviously the off season for a lot of teams in Europe, unless you're playing in the Club World Cup. We got some Paraguayans playing in that tournament actually. But of course the big question will be about Gustavo Alfaro, and obviously all eyes will be on that Paraguay call up, as a lot of players are really stepping up in the last few days, really trying to make that list to possibly get a start, especially at a crucial time when Paraguay is really trying to qualify for this World Cup against Uruguay and Brazil. These big games happening, but of course we still have a really interesting league race that we still don't have a winner as of yet. We'll see what happens this weekend with a couple of games left until the end of the Apertura. We'll see who has the best chance. We also have to look at Paraguay achievements from a youth level perspective, because they have been on the high, both men and the women's. We'll talk about them in a second. And of course, the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana, because we got the last day of the group stages for some of these Paraguayan teams looking to book their spots into the next round, either in first place, second place, possibly into another round or a playoff round or whatever. We'll talk about them in just a second. But yeah, let's go to Fede first, because I think we have to talk firstly about, the achievements Paraguay have done on the youth level, because obviously we are speaking on the week really, that Paraguay achieved two big things. One was the qualification for the girls, qualifying for the U17 World Cup in Morocco. Shout out to Florencia Cáceres, of course, who has been on the show before. And as part of that team, congratulations to her and that entire team. They are going to Morocco. They are going back to the U17 Women's World Cup. Another achievement again, Fede, for youth football as a whole in Paraguay, for men's and women's, and of course them winning the U16 team in Switzerland, in Zurich, the FIFA Youth Series. They won it for the first time ever. The first time a Paraguayan team a Paraguayan national team won a major title in Europe. That's never happened before. So this is a really big achievement for them. Shout out to Mariana Uglasic as well, who was also kind of the head coach and the mastermind that won them the U15 championship last year, and of course qualified them for the U17 World Cup this year. So it's been a boom for youth football as a whole in Paraguay. We saw that with the U20. We're obviously hopefully going to see that, and I wouldn't say youth, but obviously the main national team qualify for 26. So yeah, it's been a good week for Paraguayan football as a whole, Fed, specializing it on the youth level.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Ralph. It's nice to be back again for another one here in Guarani Vision. And what a great feeling it is, right? Just to hear you talk about those news. It really is a magical time to put on that Paraguayan jersey, to put on the Albi Roja, because we're winning and we're just picking up more and more tickets for World Cup. And it's just amazing, right? For the under 17th, which is something that we talked about before. Now this friendly tournament, but a serious tournament for players that are under 16. They played that final against New Zealand and they beat them 3-0. So that was a huge result. There are several players that are catching my attention. One in particular, because I saw him already have minutes in first division for Trinidense. This is a team that hasn't actually put that many young players in first division, but they're apparently working now in their youth academy, and they put a very young 15-year-old Brian Leguizamon. This is somebody to look out for. We always say that here in One Division. Check out these guys when they're just 15, 16, and they already start having minutes in first division. We've had a couple that have been sold lately straight to Europe, so this is probably a name to follow. And obviously for the girls, just congratulations to the whole squad, to the manager, and everybody that's just chipping in and this just doing a wonderful job in women's football in general, right? It's not just about the national team, but we're seeing it also in the local league. More girls and are obviously drawn into women's football now because of everything that's been going on. The way that things have been done lately with being so serious, and even bringing coaches from other countries. I just think the job that they're doing is just wonderful. We even saw the FA president there, Robert Harrison, in the middle of the celebration, and that just speaks about just how serious in the FA they take women's football. And I think that's something that you don't see in South America in other countries. So that's a step forward. I think we have that kind of advantage. And watch out, because we might even get that title. There are a couple of names that are catching a lot of people's attention. Obviously, Claudia, the top scorer, has been in everybody's talking. Everybody's been talking about her. I think she's probably on the radar for even European teams after what she's been doing in this under 17s. But yeah, we got to talk about that. And obviously, the title race in this Apertura, it's still open. And I'm sure that Ralph is really happy about this, because Guarani is still in it. And that was his prediction at the beginning of the year. Chiqui Arce is managing to still be in this title race, even though he has so many injured players, so many players that are out of it. But he was able to win this midweek when we had games. Libertad was able to get at least another point. They've been winningless for over a month now. It's been crazy for them, for the Gumarelos, but they still have the advantage. It's all up to them. If they win the next two games, it's all over for the rest.
Yeah, it will be. But of course, I think Ralph, going back to sort of this youth football boom right now, because obviously, obviously we want to mention the FIFA Youth Series for a second. Like, yeah, obviously that is, it might not seem like a big thing, maybe from the broader stance, but of course, the fact that it is something that is organized by FIFA and, that certain teams, don't always go into it. I'm looking at the participating teams. You got Switzerland, Guatemala, Malaysia, New Zealand, and Tunisia, of course, with Paraguay as well. So clearly this shows that Paraguay was viewed of high levels. And yeah, of course, with the U17 girls as well, for them to qualify and, hopefully they are in a chance to win it for the first time ever. They have the game tomorrow at the time of recording against Ecuador, where, I think with the tie they'll be champions because of the goal difference and because both teams are on the same on points. So yeah, it would be really nice to see Paraguayan football as a whole getting another title, because I feel, or qualification as a whole. We've seen qualification now, which has been kind of the norm, but I think something that we haven't really seen much is just titles. And so I feel like if they are to do it, and of course to do it in women's football, I think that is a huge, big step in the way that Paraguay is trying to obviously do better. And, they have tried to do better. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it's certainly something that goes in the right step and creates that winning mentality that, other teams and other countries weren't able to do. The fact that if it were to happen, let's say that Paraguay does win it, then they would do it above, they would be the first team to do it over Argentina, over Chile, over teams that have always been to women's World Cups and have done well in terms of their development of the game. But for Paraguay to do that, especially for a team that's never been to a senior women's World Cup, I think that would be a huge step to the rest of the continent and even the world to see, like, hey, these girls and, what the FA is trying to do to develop them into good players could be something that could help them in the long run.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, Roberto, Fede. Good to be back, first of all, after a little break. I think it's really testament to, as Fede was kind of alluding to, it's testament to some of the investment they put in to women's football in Paraguay from the grassroots level. It all kind of started with the local league by forcing the men's teams to have women's teams. That was actually an obligation, right? That they started way back and said to the men's teams, they said, if you don't field women's teams, we're actually going to dock you points. So there was kind of really that force, because it was the only way to really change the culture at the time. And then slowly they've been moving a bit more and more towards professionalism in that league. Still a long way to go. You're still seeing, just the other day, by the way, like Olympia won 17-0 or something in a game. So they're still not there in the women's league as where they want to be, but it was an indication of what they were starting to do. And now we're seeing with the youth teams, by bringing in the foreign coaches. For a long time they were using, the same local coaches, kind of almost recycling them. But now for women's football, they've invested with basically a group of Brazilians that are sort of starting to take over. It started at the top with Marcelo Frigerio. He's moved on, but then they brought in Fabio Fukumoto around the same time. He's coordinating pretty much all of women's football, and he's brought in Luisinho, who's the coach at the moment of the U17. So all of these little things have been happening as they try and sprinkle in, I suppose, more professionalism, more investment, and then we're starting to see that taking root, and really this is a huge moment, like you say, to actually be able to win the U17 Sudamericana was probably not on their list. I mean, the main aim was to go to the World Cup, and it was going to be very tough. Even before the Peru game, I was thinking, well, they drew their first two games. It's not bad, but you really have to beat Peru. And then they showed up with that 7-1 win. And suddenly against Colombia, thought, well, just a draw against Colombia, you're pretty much in the World Cup. And they went one step further, right? And they beat them, Colombia being the hosts, and suddenly it's put them in the World Cup and in the driving seat in this group. So it's been a really incredible showing. And I mean, it's all spearheaded by Claudia Martinez, who's just such a great player. I mean, I think we've seen kind of Jessica Martinez at the senior level. We saw Fatima Acosta at the U20s, and now we have Claudia at the U17. So we have these three very good forwards. Now, there's going to be a time in a few years where they're all going to be able to play together, and that's going to be very exciting, I think, for the senior team, because that's essentially what all of this is building up to, right? It's so, like you said, Roberto, a senior team can get to the World Cup for the first time, and it's looking good at the moment as we head into that final game tomorrow.
Yeah, and of course, we got 2 years left until that because obviously the tournament and of course the added caveat that it's in South America, the tournament we played in Brazil. So, that would be a special thing. And, it's an expanded World Cup too. So, it opens more opportunities for other countries in the world, with 32 teams. So in a way that gives Paraguay the opportunity and, obviously with Brazil as host, they don't have to qualify. So it opens the door even more for them to do it, hopefully for the first time ever. There's also Copa America as well. There's a Copa America this year. It's not serving as qualification for the Women's World Cup. That's going to be a different tournament, but that's again another opportunity. Like you said, if you have those three players like Acosta and the Martinez's, then that allows you to be like, okay, this might be something that could work out well if, obviously Paraguay want to achieve something that they've never done, and that's to win the Copa America, which is going to be obviously difficult with teams like Brazil and Argentina and whatnot. But it's certainly now this sort of understanding and feeling that, hey, they've kind of won something. So it gives them that mentality. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully that they can do it. Hopefully that by this time tomorrow, we'll celebrate another title for youth football in Paraguay as a whole. And that, yeah, we can continue to ride this wave, as I always been saying here for the senior team. But now we can ride the wave on the youth level because we've been seeing, obviously, in fact, I'll go to you to close, but it's great to see these sort of things happen in the last, year and a half or so with the youth team on the men's game doing so well, qualifying to tournaments, winning stuff. Same thing for the women's as well. I think it shows that, yeah, if it all works well, that we have a base that could help out in the long term for the next, I don't know, 5, 10 years, that kind of winning mentality can go and help the team. And of course, I think the big one will be when Paraguay do qualify for the actual senior World Cup. That kind of like just opens the door again for investment and for everything to change in the country, especially with the World Cup happening here as well.
Yeah, and I felt these last couple of years, with us not going to the senior World Cups, people have been drawn away from football. People have been watching other sports, have been watching other stuff, and all of a sudden we're close to another World Cup with Alfaro. All of a sudden we're doing really well with the youth national teams also. So people are drawn again to football. I think and a lot of people that they have their kids are now thinking, hey, why don't I take them to football practice? Why don't I put him in football again? Now, a lot of parents might have their daughter and she likes sports. Why don't I take her to play football now? Because look how well the national team is doing. Look how professional everything is right now. And I think it's part of a process, like Ralph was saying. We're seeing that with the men's football. We're seeing that with women's football, and it's beautiful to see that it's coming with results so quickly. We're having that winning mentality like you guys were talking about. But for women's football, I think there's still a long way to go. I think there's so much to do. We need upcoming stars. Ralph was talking about some of them. You ask people in the streets, name me 3, 4 women's football players, and they're not going to be able to give you that many names because we don't have that stars. That they're not that popular, to be honest with you guys. There still needs to be that development. I watch always European women's football, and it's amazing to see the stadiums packed. In England and in Spain, we are so far away from that still. From drawing people into the stands. Even in Colombia, we have a couple of places here in South America where you see that people are clicking with women's football. We still kind of need that, and it's good that it's coming with results, because I think that's what's gonna end up drawing the people to women's football, and to have more stars. I mean, what Claudinha is doing is just amazing, and I want to call her that because I don't want to mix it up with the Martinez we already have. Pita Yu there. So hopefully she can develop, and hopefully she can get herself, out there, and a lot more people can get to know her story, especially. And she's not the only one. I mean, there's so many good players in this team. I think we're going to see the best of them in just a couple of years, but it's just beautiful right now. What we're seeing, what we've been waiting for so long, Roberto, right? I mean, I remember when we were just starting this podcast out. I mean, that's not what was happening back then a couple of years ago. I mean, everything has changed, really, and it's not just the mentality; it's the way that they're doing things in the FA. They're working how they need to work, and they've gained enough experience, and we're seeing that now.
Yeah, we're seeing them reap the rewards from all of this. So hopefully that it just continues to go on for the rest of the year and into the future as well. But as we look into the future, because I feel like I'm trying to look into the future of the Apertura race, and I can't decide a champion yet, because obviously we have 2 games left in the Apertura race for the champion of the Paraguayan League, and we still don't know who's gonna win. We thought it was going to be Libertad, because Libertad took the lead against Olimpia and they needed a win just to secure them, but they couldn't do it. They got a 1-1 draw. That, in a way, opened the door for Cerro to be like, hang on, wait a minute, let's see if I can get something from there. And they couldn't do it. They blew it against Ameliano. They got a 0-0 draw. So you're thinking, all right, what's Guarani going to do? Well, after the result that they got, they lost to Ameliano. So it feels like, Ameliano have been kind of the Grim Reaper for a lot of these teams fighting in this race. Guarani go and defeat Tempetaru. So it really is something that, again, you don't, and it's funny that Tempetaru and Ameliano play in the next weekend, but yeah, we still don't have a champion at the time of recording. Libertad are still leading away with 38 points. Again, they still need just one win. They got to play General Caballero at home tomorrow at the time of recording. Cerro Porteño also play Lo de Mayo at home at the same time, whereas Guarani also at the same time plays Portillo Luqueño as well. And that is the penultimate day until the final day, where if we do get to that, Cerro will have to take on Tepetaru, or Guarani will have to travel to take on Trinidense, and Libertad will have to travel to play Dos de Mayo over there in Pedro Juan. So I'll go to Ralph on this one first, because I feel like what could have been sort of and we spoke about this in the last few weeks, that we thought that this would have been an afterthought, that Libertad were going to secure their spot recently, or sorry, a long time ago, that they could have been champions, but they really are bottling it, as as a phrase that we like to use in English terms when talking about these type of races. Can they bottle it? Because you look at Cerro right below them, what I need right there. Yes, it is obviously in a better position for them to not win. They are in a better position to win it as opposed to Center what I need. But yeah, I don't know if Libertad can finish this, because you see these results and you're thinking, wait a minute, what's going on? Why is Libertad sputtering towards the end when they've been dropping points when they could have done this a long time ago? The fact that I'm trying to remember the last time that they won a game. It's been a while. It's been a while since they won a game. I think the April 11th, that was the last time they got a win in the local league. So it's been over a month. So is this the reality? Is this the reality that Libertad are just going to choke the lead away, giving the door to Olimpia, to Guarani and Cerro Porteño? Because you can't go an entire month choking an entire league and be like, all right, we're going to just win it. Like, there is something there. And it's, of course, they have Libertadores, so maybe you could put that excuse, but a month without winning is over a month without winning is that is not that is not deserving champions to me, in my book at least.
Yeah, they're very much Libertad are very much like limping towards the finish line. The only problem is I think Cerro and Guarani are kind of crawling, so they're not quite catching up. It's incredible that Libertad has never been this kind of team. They're always a kind of team that just when it comes to the crunch, they were like, Pep's Manchester City. They just string a few games together and they win the league. And you've always sort of expected that of them at this stage especially in the Apertura, this stage of the season. And so I think all competitions, I think is 9 games they haven't won. And where you really see them failing is they're just not scoring as much as maybe they used to. So I think a lot of their games have been 0-0 draws. They've had the 1-1 with Olympian, and they've just not really been finding their groove. Whereas they've always been a very attacking team that scores a lot of goals. For sure, I think they're missing Lorenzo Melgarejo because Melgarejo has been out for a few games, and he's very important to them. The Roque and Tacuara are not getting any younger. In fact, Oscar Cardoso celebrated, right, his 42nd birthday just the night before the Olympia game. So I mean, there's a few factors there, but you look at it and you just think, why are they not able to find these kind of this kind of form just to get over the line, which they've always been able to do? It's a strange one. I mean, because looking at form now, it's just not a given that they will beat General Caballero this weekend, even though they beat them 5-0 in the first round of games in the Apertura. And then Dos de Mayo actually bottom of the league at the moment, but the idea that they could go there and take the points also doesn't seem so obvious. So, I mean, it's a really strange one. I still think if I had to put my money on it, I'd still say Libertad because Libertad are 3 points clear with 2 games left. I mean, it's still very much in their favor. But it's just been such a strange finish. And we're going to see once again, I mean, Olimpia in the Clausura was one of the lowest points totals we saw to win the short form league since it started in 2008. And this again, they might not even make the 44 points, right? I think they could if they win both games. But it's just another very low quality league title we're going to see from no team that's really convincing us. And maybe we're going to talk later about Copa Libertadores. I mean, maybe we're seeing that reflected as well in the performances on international stage. But at the moment, I mean, if you hold me to it, I still think they'd have enough. It's just been a very strange way to end a title race.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's the way to go. But, Fede, you've always been with your hot take sometimes. And, if you want to go as hot as you want with 2 games to go, and with Libertad, like I'd mentioned here in our chat, 10 games without a win in all competitions. They've only scored 5 goals for a team that loves to score. They've only scored 5 in half so they've halved their goals in terms of their games as played. So what do you say about this? Because, you know, you would think that with Cerro, with Diego Martinez, that they're trying to get something, but again, it hasn't been convincing. Guarani with Chiqui Arce, it's so inconsistent as well. So you really have 3 teams that whoever is the champion, it's gonna be a skeptical champion. Skeptical champion, I would say, because it's just, it's not the team that blows everyone away and be like, okay, yeah, these are the deserved champions. Whoever wins is going to be like, oh, they actually did it because all the other 2 just couldn't do it at the end of the day.
Yeah, but didn't we have that feeling in the Clausura last time around? Like Olimpia wasn't the best team out there, but they still managed to do it. And I was just looking at how many points they made, and they made 44 points, which is as much as Libertad can make if they win these last 2 games. They have 38 right now. So we've had champions before with 44 points. I was even looking at Rob's tweet about Nacional back in 2009, which was the lowest, the team that had the lowest point, which was 41 back then. But we've had several teams that have managed to be champions with 44 at least these last couple of years. I even remember 2016 in the Apertura, Libertad was also champion with 44 points. So they could still manage to do it in that way. The thing is, this team hasn't been winning, guys, and they've had so many problems scoring, looking like their best selves also, like that team that we saw in the first games, that team that was just fresh, that was just stomping on everyone. I mean, look back at the first game against General Caballero, which is going to be their next rival. They stomped on this team in the first round. I don't think that's going to happen this game again because Libertad is not at their top game as of right now, but they need to do it somehow. They cannot choke on this lead like I saw this week. I'm doing the Tyrese Halliburton, the Reggie Miller thing because I saw it this week in the NBA, and it's a reality. It's something that everyone's talking about here in Paraguay. Are Libertad going to be up to the task? Are they really going to be able to clinch this title that has looked only for them? No team has been up to it, really. Guarani has been, I believe, been running so tired. They've had so many injuries. We've seen that. No Willy Mendieta, no Fairley, and they have their head between 2 situations. They got to play for Sudamericana to see if they can go through. That's not the case for Libertad. They're already through in the group stage. Cerro Porteño is already through in the next stage, even though Guarani has the best opportunity, right? Because if they ended up tying in the same amount of points, it would be Guarani the champion. So everyone's asking already, what happens if we have three teams with the same amount of points? What happens if this happens? What happens if they get this result? The reality is that I see Libertad making it happen somehow. You know, they got to win at home against General Caballero. I don't expect them to lose this game at home. And I see Guarani's calendar, and they have to go against two very strong teams. And this Apertura has been all about anybody can beat anybody. I mean, look at how many points Emiliano has taken away from everybody in this second part of the tournament. They beat Cerro Porteño. They beat Guarani. They took points away from Cerro Porteño. They took points away from Olimpia. They have been one of the judges in this situation, right? And they haven't been the only one. I mean, the small clubs have taken a lot of points away from the big teams. And I don't like it when people say, no, it's not a good league. It's the level's not up there. I actually think it's very competitive. That's why we're seeing so many small clubs beating the big teams, because they're tired. They have two competitions. The calendar has been so tied up. There's too many games. A lot of people I'm hearing, maybe we should change the format. Maybe we should change the way the tournament is being played, because look at all the teams. They can barely play in these last couple of games with their best players. Lorenzo Melgarejo, Ralph mentioned, one of the best players in Libertad. He's going to be out for these last two battles that Libertad has. And that's because they're tired. That's because they've been all over the place, pretty much been playing every 3 other days. And I don't know, maybe the FA has to look into the situation, because we're not seeing the best football in these last games where everything is being decided, Roberto.
Everything is being decided for sure, but let's flip devil's advocate here for a second to both of you. Let's say Cerro and Guarani win both their games, but General Caballero do the surprise and they go and snatch something away against Libertad. Where does that flip the flavor to who? Like, you look at the last games, like I mentioned before. Tempestad do for Cerro, Guarani have to play Trinidense, and Libertad have to play Los de Mayo. All away games. They won't even. So basically, if we go to the final day, none of them will be able to lift the title at home as champions. Who do you feel is under the most pressure, and who would you give the advantage? Ralph, I'll go to you first. I mean, I still think Libertad have the advantage on this one regardless, but man, that would not be fun to play a game like this, especially when, let's say it does happen, they would go 11 games without a win in all competitions.
Yeah, so you're saying like they go into the last day, they're all tied, who would win? I would still say the biggest pressure will still be on Cerro, just because that's the big club Cerro and Olimpia just have so much pressure anyway. There's so much expectation. Even though Cerro are in a position where they shouldn't be, they shouldn't even be in a title race, right? We're talking about this, but they've somehow managed to claw it, or to hang in there, I suppose, without playing very well themselves. So I think, funnily enough, most of the pressure will be on them, even though for Libertad it will feel like they've been the ones that's given away this opportunity, and so they really have to hold on. And then for someone like Guarani, I mean, Guarani's big game coming up is this home match against Boston River that they need in the Sudamericana, and the two league games are coming either side. They're really running on empty, but then they have the perfect manager for this in Chiqui Arce, who knows the youth play. He's had enough time to work with the young players, and he's bringing them in at the right time. So like Octavio Alfonso, who was really good for Paraguay, talking about Paraguay and success recently in Sudamericanos, he's now getting a couple of games because Mendieta isn't playing. Alan Romero came on, 18 years old, to score what proved to be the winner against Tembetaru. And these are all players that, of course, Chiqui Arce at the beginning of the season wasn't using, but now he's been working with the group for a while. He can start to see what's the player and the moment who'll be up to the task. And so even though they don't have their big players, they still have this kind of excitement coming through. So there's a lot to say there. But ultimately you look at Libertad, and I think if it comes down to one game and they have to win, they still have that in them. I mean, look at some of the names we're thinking about: Roque Santa Cruz and Taquara, Diego Vieira at the back, Martin Silva mostly on the bench, but he's still there. Even Sergio Aquino himself, the coach, remember, he's one of the players that has won the most titles in Paraguayan football. He's just been there, he's done it so many times. You kind of feel when it really came down to the crunch, I think they would do it. I think Libertad would be able to do it, and so they would be the the team I'd still go with. And honestly, I do think the biggest pressure is always on Cerro just because of the way those big clubs are set up, right? There's always people expecting more and more, even when you're not really showing on the pitch that you deserve it, or that you're showing that indication that you're a championship winning team. There's just always that expectation that you should be doing it.
They're always falling short, though. I mean, Cerro Porteño in the big games against Ameliano, they did it just one more time, right? I mean, when they needed to win, they would have been just 1 point away from Libertad if they would have won that game. And it's a different situation when you have Cerro and Olimpia on top of you on a title race than when you have this Guarani team that now Chiquiaz is having to, go into the depth of his roster, look into the young players. Even though it's been Libertad lately, these last couple of years, the team that has brought to their first team more young players, but they apparently run out of those players right now, and the ones that are coming about, they're not showing their best stuff as of right now, because I think they're kind of putting them out there too fast, right? I'm talking about Rodrigo Villalba, Fretes, young players that we've seen being used lately, but they haven't yet won their spot over in the first team. So Sergio Aquino's not finding all the right answers to his issues. He has his first experience also as a manager. The same thing we can say for Diego Martinez in Cerro Porteño. He doesn't have the pedigree. He doesn't have the experience there of these kind of situations where you have a tight calendar and you got to push it through in these in these games in crunch time. And that's the advantage that Francisco Arce has. He knows what the players can give him and how much he can get from the young players. Also, because of what Ralph said, he's been working with a lot of these kids for over a year now, so he knows that it's their time now. I think he's waited way too long. I thought that he was going to rotate his players before, but he had to do it in this last game, and it ended up having a good result. It would even be worse for Libertad if they end up losing the title to the youngest Guarani squad possible. So I'm putting my money on Libertad. They cannot lose this Apertura. They are still hanging on to that advantage that they got in the first half of the season, in the first half of this Apertura, and they're still holding on to that advantage. I think it was a 8-point gap at the beginning of the second half of this tournament. So they're still hanging out to that situation. They have barely won games, but this team has been the best team, I believe, in the Apertura at the beginning. That's where we saw the best out of this team, and that's where they've shown that they've deserved it. So I'm going to stick to that, Roberto. It was Olympia's obligation to win this Apertura because it is named after the biggest president in the history of Olympia, but they're out of it. This is one team that we're already scratching out. It's only down to the last three. Libertad, Guarani, and Cerro Porteño. One of those teams will be champions.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens tomorrow. If, we would want some drama, but I do feel like it's going to be an afterthought of the sense of like, yeah, I think Libertad should do their job, and then it's all over. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. What we will also see, there's still more drama, at least on the continental level, because obviously we have Libertadores and Sudamericana. We can only talk about 3 teams at the time that could obviously secure their spots in the next round. I guess we'll continue with Libertad because they take on Alianza Lima at home literally midweek after this. So again, it comes at a high pressure stake for them that, hey, maybe they don't even win this weekend, but now they have to focus on this, where in theory, they could win the group, but of course it has to depend on a huge goal swing from Talleres to do the job at the Morumbi in San Pablo, or Libertad doing a huge route against Alianza Lima, who are also still looking to qualify for the Sudamericana. But I think it is going to be an afterthought. I think Libertad will obviously finish in second. Again, I don't see them going top of their group. I don't see any of the situations happening. So for them, it's going to be dependent, and I'll go to Fed on this one first. I think it's just going to be dependent on what they get in the next round. So in this case, I feel like whatever happens, they're safe. But as crazy as this sounds, they're really their big focus is probably this weekend in regards to how they'll do in the league, and then that for the Sudamericana and for the Libertadores, the odds are really against them to really win that group, or for San Pablo to mess up heavily against Talleres.
Yeah, you don't expect Sao Paulo to lose it at home, right? They're probably going to end up with the first spot. But I look at Libertad's campaign; they can make it up to 11 points if they win this last game, and they only lost to Sao Paulo, which is the strongest team in this group. So props to them. I mean, they've done a wonderful job so far. Winning the big game, especially against Alianza Lima in Peru. I think that was a huge game booster for them in this group, and they left Alianza Lima right there at the top, at the bottom of this group. So as of right now, I'm feeling really good about Libertad's opportunity to get that last win and to make it at least in the second spot. And I would be very happy if I was a Libertad fan with what this team has shown so far with the injuries, with some players coming in, and now with the double distraction of playing the Apertura, fighting for that title, and trying to get through in Libertadores. I think overall, it's been a really good journey for them in this group stage. I'm really happy with Libertad's situation coming into this last game. If they're fighting for the first spot, I think this is just what I wanted to see from this team, and they have a huge opportunity to go through. They have enough money, a really good budget to bring in interesting players in the second half of the year. So I'm really looking forward to what Libertad can do out of the group stage. This is a team that we've been waiting for them to do something huge in the international stage, and I expect them to go through, obviously, because they're already through, but I expect them to do things and even go to the latter stages. I want to see this team at least in semifinals. I want to see this team go big in the Libertadores this year.
I think what they've done really well in the Libertadores is the fact they're not scoring many goals in the league. We talked about as maybe a deficiency, but here what they've been really sensible about are the very tight games and just doing enough and getting results. And like the win in Lima was huge, for example, because this is a very good Alianza Lima team. It's not of past times. And so when this group started, you did think, well, you've got Alianza Lima on the up. You have Talleres have been doing very well. Sao Paulo is going to be a Brazilian big team that's always hard to beat. So I don't think it was a given that Libertad were going to qualify from this group. So they have done very well to put themselves in that position and doing it very sensibly. So I think they should be very pleased with what they've done. And then, yeah, like Fede says, if they can get some investment, maybe especially up front, right? If they could just bring in they haven't done this for years, but bringing in a big Argentinian, Brazilian striker, into wow, then they could be very exciting. They've relied so long on Roque and Taquara, but there's maybe space, there's room for someone new, which I think would be pretty cool to see in that second round where they might need that real spark to try and get through in the knockouts.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think it's going to be really something that hopefully they can do business heading into, and of course we have to see who they face in the round of 16. But yeah, this is really their big step if they can really make the big push in towards of going into the latter stages and kind of representing Paraguay. The same thing has to happen to Cerro because Cerro Porteño are also in a good spot to qualify to the next round of the Copa Libertadores. They're already of a short of at least the Sudamericana, but a lot of things have to go wrong in this one. So they have to go to Bolivar, they have to go to La Paz, they have to go to the altitude. But in a way that kind of helps them is that Palmeiras host Sporting Cristal. Again, this is a Palmeiras side that have gone unbeaten in this entire round. They don't lose at home typically. So I again, I'll go to Ralph on this one first. I don't see Sporting Cristal getting the surprise. Maybe Palmeiras will fully rest them, but I don't see them getting anything in this one. And even more so, if it goes badly for Cerro, it has to go really bad for them over there in La Paz. It's a 4-goal swing. That's the difference between them and Cristal in terms of goal difference. So I don't see any of it happening. I don't even see it. Worst case scenario, if it is a rout, I don't see Palmeiras dropping points or losing to because even a draw wouldn't be enough for Sporting Cristal. But I don't see Cristal winning over there in São Paulo, and maybe Cerro will go lose badly in Bolivar, which obviously I don't think they want to, but uh, I think it's safe to say that unless something really, really bad happens to the Cedro side, which, very typical of them to do, they will get in that second place spot, which again was the expectation for them to go to the round of 16 and to finish below Palmeiras and get out of what was a really tricky group at the start of the draw.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there were two big things for Cerro, which was avoid being beaten heavily by Palmeiras, which they did. I mean, I think Palmeiras beat them quite comfortably, but it wasn't embarrassing. And the other thing was not to slip up in the games against Cristal and Bolivar at home. Of course, they slipped up against Cristal, but then they managed to turn it around by winning in Lima, something they hadn't done for 50 years as a club, well, at least in the Libertadores. So, I mean, I think they've made up for that. They've beaten the teams they had to beat, and pretty much they're in. I would say they're in the next round. The idea that somehow Palmeiras would lose heavily. I mean, if something crazy could happen and Cristal could win like 1-0, 2-1, but that's not going to be enough. The idea also that Cerro would get beaten heavily in Bolivar, in La Paz, I don't think so, because I would imagine they're just going to go with that very quiet defensive mentality. It's true, it's not really Diego Martinez's style. He likes to go and attack, but he has so much more to work with. If assuming they win tomorrow in the league, he can't take up all his best players to La Paz, have them running around 90 minutes and bring them back down to then try and what could potentially be a league deciding game at the end. So he's going to put a pretty veteran team, I think, and a very defensive minded team up there in La Paz. And I don't think we shouldn't see that a crazy swing either way, right? From these two games. So I think Cerro have done the hard work. The win in Lima was huge. And now they got to think about the next round and hopefully avoid a big Brazilian team, because I don't think they'd have enough to get through if that happens. But there are teams in there that they might end up facing and think they have a chance. You know, Universidad de Chile or somebody, they might feel they could win that game.
Yeah, and I've heard Bolivar, they got a huge blow because they lost Ramiro Baca, which has been one of their best players in this Libertadores, top scorer. I remember he scored a couple of bangers, especially one against Cerro Porteño in that game that they had here in Asunción. But I expect Cerro Porteño just to get a good result. Maybe even a tie would be enough. I think Bolivar doesn't have much to play for, as they're in the bottom of this group. They've lost the big games. I think they were aiming to go through in the group stage, and as of right now, they kind of fallen apart as a team. So I think it's Cerro's opportunity to stop on this team and really go through with the good result and feeling good about themselves for the second half of the year. There's already rumors about big names coming in to Cerro Porteño for the last 6 months of the year. I think there's going to be a lot of players that are going to look at Cerro Porteño and think, okay, I have an opportunity here to play Libertadores, the latter stages, do something for a huge team like Cerro that hasn't been able to get out of the group stage lately. So yeah, I think it could be a special moment for Cerro Porteño as they move forward with Diego Martinez. Also, this coach that has been there, a lot of people saying, no, they should fire him. They should already let him go. He doesn't win the big games. But look at this team in Libertadores. They're very much alive. Their numbers are pretty much equal. They scored 7 goals. They received 7 goals. So as of right now, I think Cerro Porteño has done an okay job for as much games as they've had to play in this Libertadores to get through the group stage also. And as of right now, I feel that they've shown that they're a much better team than Sporting Cristal and Bolivar, so they deserve that second spot. And hopefully they can do that now against Bolivar in this last game. I think they won the most important game, which was against Sporting Cristal, to not have them on top of you for this upcoming game against Bolivar. So it's all up to Cerro Porteño, and they play better away. They play without the pressure. They play their best football when they're away. So I expect them to at least get a draw against Bolivar.
Well, we also have to hope that Guarani can do the job at home, because again, it's funny. The three teams that are really in this Apertura race, and they're the ones that are really in focus in the Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana. Just shows how good they've been so far this year. Obviously, Guarani will have to take on Boston River at home. At the same time, Independiente will host Nacional Potosí. Independiente are leading the way to the round of 16 right now with 9 points. Guarani is obviously there with 8 points in the knockout round playoff. Nacional Potosí is right below them with 7, and Boston River already eliminated, so they won't have any chance. So, Fede, I do feel that it really does seem like Guarani are in a good spot to qualify. I mean, the fact that they are taking on, it's really in their favor. They're taking on a team that's already eliminated, have nothing to play for, so that gives them the advantage. So they are hoping that they can get the job, and that Independiente and Potosí, Nacional Potosí, are not able to get a winner in this one, because of course it's the goal difference too. Independiente at +3, Guarani at +2. and Nacional Potosí at +2. So it would really have to hope that in a perfect scenario, Guarani can finish top of the round of 16 to avoid the Libertadores third place teams and win their group by defeating Boston River very handily, and that Independiente and Nacional Potosí, that we don't see a winner in that one.
Yeah, Independiente have to play a crucial game this weekend in semifinals in the Argentina League. They might be distracted in that sense, right? They don't have a huge squad to play both competitions. Gabriel Avalos, the Paraguayan, was pretty much out for this first game. We'll see if he's back to it this weekend and if he can be up for that important game for Independiente to see if they can clinch that first spot. As for Guarani, I'm feeling good about their chances because of the rival that they have in front of them. Boston River hasn't looked well. They've been a very young team in this Sudamericana. I think Guarani are gonna win it at home. But I do expect Independiente to also beat Nacional Potosí. So I think Guarani is going to fall in the second spot in this group as they were outplayed in both games against Independiente. They got a good result in Asunción, but they were outplayed in both games. And especially in Buenos Aires, I think Independiente has been the team that has deserved it more. And I believe they're going to end up in the first spot, and Guarani is just going to have to play it out in the second spot and go for the playoffs and wait to see who they go up against. A team of coming from Libertadores, maybe, right?
Yeah, I think Guarani, we've seen they won both their home games. Boston River have lost both their away games. You can see on paper, I think Guarani should have enough to do this and get over the line in terms of at least confirm qualification. And then Independiente, like Fede said, as much as they have stuff going on in the local league, again, the quality, they win their home games. Nacional Potosí don't win away, they win at home at altitude. So again, I think we'll probably just see this group, both teams with 3 more points than they already have, and it will remain the same. But again, this is a great result for Guarani. It's not easy, this Sudamericana now, the way the format is set up for is basically set up to, I think, to favor bigger teams because you get more matches, right? There's less a chance of a shock. So Guarani have done really well just to put themselves in that position. With someone like Potosí, you always know that they have the chances to win their games, and in fact, they were unbeaten right at home, as you maybe would have expected. So it's one of the more difficult groups when you get a so-called small team, but the small team plays at altitude. So they've done really well. And this is another boost in terms of financially. I think this kind of financial boost is much bigger for Guarani than it is for Libertad and Cerro, the idea of qualification. So that's really important for them as they continue to try and build up on what they're doing, because they do have a very young team at the moment. And then maybe they do want to add. Now they're starting to see we've got this good base. Do we need to add just a little bit here and there to try and take us to that next level, both in the league and also in international competition? But I'm confident I can see them going through as well. So 3 teams in the next round. I think that will be 3 teams in the next round across both tournaments, right? I think that will be a good showing for Paraguayan football. Always good to be there in the second half of the year.
Absolutely, and we'll have to wait and see if their dream kind of lasts much longer than expected as well, as we see who they face in the next round. So it's going to be really interesting in these next few days, with obviously possibly league races being decided, Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana spots being decided as well. And we'll obviously cover, as we always do here on Guarani Vision, as we close out another great episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Rob Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.